Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to see the solution to the events exercise that was introduced in the last video, right? Right. So just to revise, this was what we had, and if I refresh, this was what we had in the beginning, and as soon as you press roll dice, you get a number between 1 and 6, and both of these need to go up to 100, and you can keep on doing this. The number is random, and anything can happen, right? And if you hover over any one of them, it says that count is X% complete, assuming that the total number is 100, right? Alright, so now we have to make this. So first of all, I'll make a new file and I'll name it solution1.html, right? And I'll save this inside the JavaScript events folder, and another new file, solution1.js. Right. So now I'll first go into the HTML and I'll get my standard format, and in the title I will give, what did I have here? Counter exercise. The body will be dice counter as an h1. Then the next thing we need is this button. So I'll make a button, and inside this I need roll dice. Right. The next I need is, it does seem that the next thing I would need is just this odd or even, right? So first let me give that. So that is inside of a paragraph tag, and you could do this. This would work. This would show up fine, right? If I open this, this does show up fine. That's not a problem, right? But the problem is that currently there's no way to access this and this separately, or this whole thing, but we'll get to that later, right? For now, I'm just going to get the initial look of the page, which we have already got, right? This is what our page looks from the beginning. So now we can start adding the JS, and we will have to add more HTML too later on. So first I'll link my tags, my files, sorry. So I'll do src is equal to solution1.js, right? And in here I can go and say and now I refresh, this gets connected. So that's fine, right? So now I can start making my code. So the first thing here is that whenever I roll a dice, I get a number between 1 and 6. That is the first thing that I'm going to handle. So for that, we need to add an event to this button that whenever this is clicked, some logic is happening. So first we will select this. I'll do document.querySelector button, right? So now I have my button here, and what I can do is I can do button dot add event listener, and that is on click, so I'll do click, and then I'll make my function. I'll do the arrow function syntax, right? And in here, first let's just get the number, right? And I'll do var number is equal to, so I told you to research this on the web, and how you do it is math.floor. I'm writing that first, and I'll explain how I reached to this in just a moment. Right, so this is what I've made, and how did I come to this, right? So basically math.random is a function, inbuilt function that returns a value between 0 and 1, right? So we will get a value from 0 to 1 in here, and what we are doing is we are multiplying that by 6, So now our value will be between 0 to 6. And note that this 6 is exclusive, you cannot get this 6 here, right? Right, so now with this we get a value between 0 and 6, right? But the thing is that this can be a decimal value too, and obviously a dice will not give you a decimal value, right? By decimal I mean the point thing. It could be 3.4. So of course you don't want that. So what we have done is we have done math.floor. So what math.floor does is it just removes the decimal. So if it is 3.4, it will give 3, and if it's 2.24, it will give 2. So whatever the number is, it removes everything after the decimal point, right? So if the 6 is exclusive, means the maximum value can be 5.9999 and so on, right? Infinite nines. But the floor of this will be 5. So the math.floor, if I do math.floor on this, right, that will give me a value from in 1 to in this range, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And now we are adding 1 to it, due to which the value will become in the set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So this is how I reached this expression here to get a value between 1 and 6. So now my number will be a value between 1 and 6, and just to check that everything is working fine, I can log that to the console first, right? Now I'll refresh the page, I'll open my console, and yeah. So now if I press this, I get 2, then 2 again, 3. So basically this is a coincidence that we got 2 4 times. But you see we are getting a, new value every time. Or even if it's a repeated value, we are getting a random value every time, which is what we wanted. Right, so our value is getting calculated successfully, right? And now what we need to do is we need to keep a count of what the points are, right? Because the next thing that's happening when I press this button is the count is increasing. So before we update that on a page, we actually need to have a track of that. And that I'm going to do through two variables. So one is odd and the next is even. So you can declare multiple variables with the same var by putting a comma in between. So in this syntax, odd is initialized to 0, a variable named odd is initialized to 0, and a variable named even is initialized to 0, right? And what these are going to be are basically the number of times we have got odd or even. So what I'm going to do is if number mod 2 equals 0, then I'm going to do even plus plus, because this will be an even number, else I will do odd plus plus, right? So now we are getting our number and we are increasing our counter on the basis of whether it is even or odd, right? So now let's just complete the button thing first about updating these two. Like right now our variables are getting updated, that's sure, but they are not getting reflected in the page. And why is that? That's because we have hard coded 0 and 0 into here, right? And this is not something we want. So for this, I'm going to have to add some spans inside this paragraph, right? So how I'm going to do this is I'll select this, I'll move this inside a span, right? And I'll move this one inside another span. And you'll see why I did that in some time in this video itself, right? So I'll give id is equal to and odd, right? And similarly in the even, I'll do something like span even and another span, and in here I'll give 0, right? And so this even 0 I will remove, and to this outer span for the even I'll give an id is equal to even, right? So what has happened here basically is that I have this paragraph tag, and I'll indent this a little better so that you can get a better idea of what's actually happening. right? So this is our structure. The complete this is a paragraph, and inside here we have one span, this basic main span, and another span. So two main spans. One is for the odd, and next is for the even. Inside which the value we have chosen is also for the span, right? So a lot of spans here, but this is the structure that we required. And now what I'm going to do is, basically we need to update the text content inside of this span and this span at each step, right? That is what we need to do, and that is why we needed some spans to actually select only this text in the whole page, right? So I'll first select those two, and for the odd, I'll do odd counter variable name, right? And I will do document dot query selector. And the reason I'm using query selector is that this will be a complex selector, right? Like the adjacent or the contained selector that we saw. Because we see we have a lot of spans here, and this span does not have any specific ID or class. So what we can do is I can select the span inside of odd span, right? So if you don't remember the selector, this basically means that I want to select the span which is inside an element with ID of odd, right? So this span is inside an element with ID of odd, and that is why this gets selected. Similarly, I'll do var even counter is equal to document dot query selector even span. So with this, this span will get selected, right? Alright, so now we have our odd counter and even counter set up, and just because these were complex selectors, I'll log this first. I'll log both of these to the console just so we can verify that they have been selected properly, right? And if I go back here, I refresh, I'll just go to my console, and I see that this first we've printed the odd counter, right? So this is the correct representation. This is the odd counter that's being highlighted, and here the second thing is being highlighted, means our selections are perfectly fine, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these because we don't want to print them to the console. So what we want to do basically is we want to update the text content inside of them. And it's obvious that if the number is even, then we have to update the even counter, and if the number is odd, we have to update the odd counter, right? So in here, I'll do even counter dot text content is equal to even, right? And similarly here, I'll do odd counter dot text content is equal to odd. All right. So now if I refresh, I see this becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's basically because I got a lot of odd numbers by chance. And if I refresh again and I do this, I'm getting almost equals, right? And this is working fine, but we still don't actually see which number came up, so it could be like anything, right? So that's the next thing that we can do, that if I refresh this, I don't have anything here, but if I press the roll dice once, and then every time it shows me that roll number was this, right? So next thing we need to add is this paragraph right here. So now how you can implement that is that before this, you can have an empty paragraph, right? Because if you are actually adding some text in here, you need to have some tag, right? Which the tag for which you can modify the content. So that's what we're gonna have here, and I'll give it an ID specifically, even though I could just select the first paragraph and this would work. But as this is a very specific thing, I can give this an ID by, let's say, rolled info, right? And what I can do here is I can select this in a variable named info is equal to document dot, and my code I did query selector here too, but just to show you different things, again I'll do get element by ID, and inside here I'll give my ID as rolled info, right? So now this is being selected, and the best way to check this is actually modify right? So what we're going to do is, as this event is triggered and after the number is found, we can do info dot text content is equal to uh, rolled number is plus number, right? So by this, now if I refresh, I see I get roll number is 3, then 3 again, then 2, then 1, then 6, 5, 1, 4, 1, and so on. And you can see the corresponding counter is getting updated. Alright, so this is working fine now too. The last thing that we need to add is that whenever we are hovering over this, we are getting this count is 9% complete and this count is 3% complete, for example, right? So that, of course, we cannot do through the button listener, because you see that there's no relation of the button here. We're just hovering over things and that's giving us something else, right? And that's why I added these outer spans too. I could just have added this span and give it an ID, and this span and give it an ID, and that would have been enough to select the odd counter and even counter, right? But the reason I gave this bigger span too is because we have to add a hover effect over this whole span, right? So that is what we are aiming for now. So I'll give you first, before we start, I'll tell you what will actually happen is that we will add a listener to this whole span, right? And as soon as my mouse enters this, there will be a paragraph whose text is updated, right? So first of all, let's make that paragraph outside this one, right? And I'll give it a ID of let's say info, just info, right? Yeah. So what we're going to do is, as soon as we hover over this span or this span, accordingly we are going to change the text content of this paragraph, right? And that hover will be added through an event listener saying that whenever my mouse enters this span, then change the text content of this, or when it enters this span, change the text content of this. So I've given it an ID of info, and I can select this by var, let's call it complete is equal to document dot, and now I'll do query selector again, and I need to select the ID with info, right? And now what I can do is, alright, so first I need to select these two spans too, right, individually, because we have to add individual effects on both of them, considering the fact that this gives me different text and this gives me different text. So we can't have the same event listener for both of them, right? So I'll select this span first, right? This whole span, this one. So how I'll do that is, I'll name that var odd info is equal to document dot query selector hashtag odd, right? So that will get selected, and similarly I can do hashtag even for even info. So now what I need to do is, I need to add event listeners to odd info and even info, right? So I'll do it for odd info first, is equal to odd info dot add event listener, and what we're gonna do here is mouse enter. So what happens is, as soon as our mouse enters this, we get the effect, we get the function, right? So I'll make my function, right? And so the next thing that I'm going to do is simply change the text content. So we have to change the text content of info here, right here. So I can do info, which is selected incomplete, right? So this is complete dot text content is equal to odd. So we're entering odd, right? So we need to enter odd percentage completed is plus, and we need to do odd plus percent, because of course if our maximum is 100, then you know this variable, the counter, is actually the percentage, right? And that's why we can just say odd here, and I can do percent. Alright, so now if I go here and I refresh my page, I should expect to see something when I hover over odd, and I do get it, right? However, so first I'll add that for even too, right? And then we'll get to the however part. So I'll have to add a similar thing for even. I'll do even info.add event listener, mouse enter, complete.text content. We have to add even percentage completed is even percent, right? Now if I go and I refresh my page, I roll dice and so on, so on, so on. I hover over even. I'm getting even percentage completed is 6%. I hover over odd. I'm getting odd percentage completed is 8%. However, even if I exit this odd, this thing does not go away. The only reason this is changing is because we are overwriting the value. However, as soon as I exit the span, no effect is here. But in this, if I hover over them, only then the paragraph is shown, and as soon as I exit, the paragraph is getting removed. So for that, we basically have to change the paragraph's content back to an empty string as soon as our mouse exits the particular thing, right? What I mean is that we need to have another listener here, and this one is going to be for mouse leave, right? Because we already have for mouse enter. So what we're going to do now is we'll add for mouse leave, and this is how this will go. Then I can do complete dot text content is equal to an empty string. Alright, and similarly I can add for even. And I can add my callback, right? And I can do complete dot text content is equal to this thing right here. So now what we've done is we've added an event listener to change the paragraph's contents to odd percentage completed is odd percent. And we've added an event listener to change the paragraph's content to an empty string as soon as our mouse leaves that particular span, right? So now if I refresh this page, I should have exactly what I had here, right? I roll the dice, I'm getting roll number is 4, odd 0, even 1. I hover on odd, I'm getting this. I go away from odd, it vanishes. I hover or even, I'm getting this. I go away from even, it vanishes. And I can keep on doing this, right? And this can go on infinitely right now. And there's one thing that I did not do even in this particular code which I showed you, but as a bonus we are going to do that here. And let's say that our total percentage, total maximum value was not 100, it was 15, right? So we'll add something that if our this becomes 15, one of the counters becomes 15, then we'll output that wins, right? So I'll just show you that. So what we can do is on an event listener, right, this, and after that we can do if odd is equal to 50. We can say we can change this content here, right? Complete. Let's change complete dot text content is equal to odd wins, right? And next we can do else if even is equal to 15, complete dot text content is equal to even wins, right? And this is actually quite basic still. We could do something like the values don't go up after this or a lot of things, but we'll not actually do that. We'll do this, and if I keep on doing this, then I think odd will win. We get odd wins, and this vanishes of course because the value gets overridden. But we could do something like as soon as our this becomes 15, we can stop all further operations. But that would be a little more than what I've thought for this video, so we can leave that for now, right? And this is what we were supposed to make, right? And we have added all our things, and this looks perfectly fine. So yeah, and notice how I've done all the selecting at one place, and this one event listener at one place, then odd info listeners at one place, even info at one place. And that is actually, you might not have done that. You might have just written the code wherever you wanted to, and that would work fine in this kind of a scenario. But when you're making a really big code, then you would eventually have to shift to this kind of an approach where you're doing all similar things in one place, right? Because that will help you organize your code a lot. So you could even add comments here, right? And I could say that this means add listeners for our effect on odd counter, right? And in here I could say add event listeners for our effect on even counters. So now I have a well commented code here too, and you don't need to specifically put comments if you already know what you've done, like specific comments as in that this is for entering and this is for leaving. You could figure that out if you had seen this comment already, right? So that's not that big of a problem, but having something like this will actually help you a lot. And of course that changes nothing on the page, and now we have what we were wishing for, and this can go on to infinity now because we've removed the 15 condition, right? Alright, so that was it for that, and now that you've seen that, you have all the basic knowledge required to make any interactive front-end web page, and you can make that easily. So congrats for that. And the next, we're going to see jQuery after this, and then our front-end will be complete, right? Alright, so congrats on finishing all the knowledge in front-end. jQuery is basically something that will help you do the things that you're already doing here in a shorter syntax, kind of, right? And it'll be just the same thing. It doesn't even give you any extra power like the bootstrap, but it actually helps you write this code short. Like you could do something which would finish this event listener much more easily, right? So yeah, that's the only thing jQuery helps you do, and that's why I'm saying that you now have all the knowledge for the front end, and now you can go to any web page online and you can see, you can make the design, and you can make all the functionalities, except the ones that involve backend, of course, and you won't have any problem in that. If you ever have, if you're doing something and you run into a problem, you can share that with me and I'll be happy to help you, right? Alright, so that's for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.